Welcome back to Inside Prediction Markets, a special vacation edition where I'm calling in remotely to chat with Chris. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm also remote right now, but hoping to go back into the office after this episode. I'm not, a
Right.
slacker like you, Henry.
All right, we're going to start with our big three stories in prediction markets this week. And number one, what I think is the biggest story of the week, or the powers that be want it to be, is this report. I'll tell you the initial report. An initial report that an unnamed La Liga team who is facing relegation bet against themselves on kalshi as a financial hedge against the enormous losses they would suffer if they were relegated. And everybody suspects this is Osasuna, who survived relegation in the last game of the season. By the way, lost 1-0 but survived relegation because the margin wasn't wide enough. That the nonsense that goes into soccer surprises me every day. Anyways, so the league, La Liga, which is the big Spanish league, comes out not long after this story and says, "Hey, this didn't happen. This is not how teams hedge relegation risk. Uh, Most teams buy insurance against it, and one of the insurers may have themselves traded against a team to hedge their own risk, but we don't know anything about the specifics of that." Um, and Susquehanna was reported as the counterparty. I don't know if they confirmed that. So, anyways, this is one of these stories that I think does lay bare that there is a real financial case for trading on sporting events often, but that also kind of feels like an industry plant type story that got sent out everywhere to create a narrative. I don't know if you have any reactions to it, Chris.
No, I mean this is very similar to the Jeffrey Barr thing. It's funny what a couple coworkers of mine we were arguing over if you could just always hedge and stuff like that, and I was like, it's a promotion. It all the hedge does is reduce variance. That's all it does. It's still you can't just like do run this promotion all the time, make a bunch of money and be good. Like these promotions, and these hedges, all they do is reduce variance, and I don't think they're like that needed for like the small things. And the fact that the media was picking it up with a lack of understanding of what the hedge even. I mean, I loved watching the bar thing where it was like, oh, the two situations are either the Knicks win and the trade wins, so the profit, or the Knicks lose and they get a bunch of business. It's like that's not how it works. The thing with like this soccer thing, it's not like, oh, he either wins money in terms of his trade or they don't get relegated, so he saves money that way. It's like, no, he had to pay for the trade. Like he lost a lot of money, like making that trade. That's a huge negative expense. So I think it's completely misunderstood by the public and media, and definitely plants. But it's good for the industry, so can't blame them. All right, the second biggest thing I saw this week was FanDuel laying off a bunch of people. They are switching, you know, I think they're aiming more towards prediction markets or like tightening up the ship, and the stock ripped off of the news. It's up like 10% the last 2 days. Very excited. This is um happening, and it shows another clear shift that like these companies are going more towards prediction markets. I think when you have even the top tier sports books acknowledging that they're likely here to stay, that shows you that they are and it's going to be in fact likely here to stay.
Yeah, I think it's the third round of layoffs for them this year, which you usually try to avoid multiple rounds of layoffs as a business. You'd rather go big and overfire than do that just because of the culture thing. So it tells you that probably each time they've underestimated the need. I don't envy anybody who's a officer level person at a trad sports book right now. It's just not a great time. Um, and they're probably all making some really hard decisions like that.
Yeah. So the last thing, and this will tie into what we're first going to talk about, is Jason Robbins tweeted the NBA Finals Game 1 delivered the biggest active customer day in DraftKings prediction history, bigger than the Super Bowl. This is the power of bringing sports experiences nationwide, and we're just getting started.
Biggest, by the way, means like just a hair over 1 billion of annualized volume, which is, for instance, significantly less volume than Novig does on a monthly basis, right? Which is
Right.
still
Right.
good for them, I guess.
Yeah. Um, so something else I wanted to talk about there is, while it's nice that they're getting the prediction markets thing, um, um, the thing that I found most interesting, and I guess our main topic that I wanted to talk about is really like market making in these big unique spots. So I think the game one of um the NBA Finals is a really good example of this, because if I'm pulling up the odds right before, um, DraftKings was offering plus 142 on the Knicks, minus 170 on the Spurs for the money line, whereas like Pinnacle was at like 168 minus 188, close to the tip. Um, and prediction markets were offering literal arbitrages to DraftKings where you could bet the or trade the Knicks on the on the on novig or a different one, and then arb it out on the Spurs on DraftKings, which I found very interesting because to me it shows that the public had a real influence here. The Knicks are an extraordinarily popular team. Their fan base has a lot of money and are very exciting. They wanted to back their team, and when you get one way flow into that, the price can move down and down and down. And especially with a company like DraftKings that makes it so no one with a pulse can really bet there. You get situations like this. So, uh, you know, Henry, as someone that's done this for, as a market maker much longer than I have, I've been a bettor for several years, but as a market maker, I did think about these situations where it's just like clearly the public wants one side, and clearly the sharps want another side. You don't want to just give like good prices just to give good prices, but you want to make as much money as you can. But it's a difficult balance to play.
So, for those who couldn't follow all the numbers, what Chris was basically saying is that the Knicks are a super public side. And so on DraftKings in particular, you got terrible odds taking the Knicks at every single game so far this series, at least by our numbers and by comparison to the rest of the market. There's always a chance somebody from DraftKings says, no, like we make the Knicks better than market. We love our number. You never really know exactly what they're doing, but it's a pattern we've seen in
Oh,
particular
come
for the
on,
last.
Henry. You know
Yeah,
damn well what's
I'm
going
just
on.
I'm just saying because you know it's and I think so on my side, when we were a very very small team, um, and we didn't have the resources to like make and trust our own numbers right up until tip on NBA. Um, we would be much more glued to the market. What that means, is DraftKings the leader in the market? Probably not, but we would kind of center around the market and then move off flow. And so if we had all of that Knicks inflow, we also would kind of fade our prices the same way. But we would also eventually take orders from the other side because we're trading on an exchange, right? So we kind of get batted back into the middle. Whereas, like you're saying, DraftKings just doesn't have the users who are allowed to come in on the other side. Um, and if you did have a unlimited DraftKings account and you used it to max bet the Spurs, you probably lost your account in one of the first 3 games. Um, so I think it's a cool spot to like actually, know ball and be able to make numbers and find where you really want to be. But then also it's an example where the unlimited risk appetite element of prediction markets really shines, right? Because the fact is, um, every desk has a risk desk. Sorry, every desk has to worry about risk, right? Nobody can take an unlimited position. Um, but when you let anybody trade and anybody onto a platform, you can hold a number in place a lot longer and write, hundreds of millions in action against one side, because the risk is dispersed over so many people. And I think that's like one of these things is kind of in the weeds, but it really benefits the public and sharps, right? Like it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Public's getting better numbers, sharps are getting filled, right? Like it is it's a hard story to tell in a coherent way, but I think when we talk about, um, you know, prediction markets are peer to peer, right? Like obviously it doesn't mean you're steamrolling Joe the plumber, but it does mean things like this, which are very beneficial to regular people. If only there were a way to kind of synthesize this in a way that your enemies couldn't easily poke a hole in it, but alas. I want to ask you, in addition to the side, which we obviously been very public about how we've been on Spurs and against Knicks basically this entire run. Ugh. Um, is has there been a player prop angle, or have you seen activity in player props that in particular you think is like unique to playoff series, where either public activity or on the modeling side, you're able to get kind of deeper into the weeds than what you can in the regular season?
Um, for this one, not really, but in general, I think there is. I was talking to someone much smarter about NBA than myself, and something he said is, um, in regular season, these teams just like they have their minutes, they stick to the rotation, and they're not going to change. It's an 82 game season. It's a long year. They want to just keep it rolling. They don't want to make adjustments. Well, when you're down 0-2 and your back's against the wall, you've got to make some adjustments. And you saw it in like I'm already blanking out who, but I think when the Cavs series and they just changed starter. They put someone in. I'm blanking on their name, but they made him a starter versus the Knicks. They're like, okay, we got to try something new here. And so if you actually know ball and you're like seeing, oh, this matchup is this player is getting cooked here, or he's doing really well, you can anticipate a coach doing that. And I think this is really the true ball knowers can really profit here. In the regular season, not as much because if they want to give, for the Knicks, if they want to give Mitch Robinson 20 minutes, they're going to give him 20 minutes basically every game with a little bit of range. In the playoffs, Mitch Robinson could literally go from um, 10 minutes to 25 minutes to 5 minutes in the three games. It can be totally rational. I think the best example that I could think of is honestly last year Rockets Warriors series. Everyone saw Steven Adams absolutely shred the Warriors. I mean, he was clearly one of, if not the best player on the Rockets, or the second best player on the Rockets behind Sengun. So impactful, and you know, his overs steamed a bunch from game to game because it was like they're going to give Adams as many minutes as they possibly can, as much as his body can take, because he is so valuable here, and that would never happen in the regular season. This playoffs, I don't think we're seeing an extreme example like that. Maybe we have, and I just haven't paid attention to it. But from the player prop point of view, that's really all I'm seeing.
I think it was Max Strus took Dean Wade's starting
Thank you.
spot in
Yes.
game
Yes.
4. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, which is something that you saw kind of rollick the markets. Yeah. I think it's just to get into the actual personnel a little bit, because the Knicks have Cat and Jalen Brunson, like they don't have the clear like 1A S class scorer that could really go asymmetrical. Um, and then the Spurs, it's less clear to me how uh we're putting together our numbers on that team, on the prop side. But yeah, I think that's part of why we've just like entirely been focused on mains. I think is that we aren't in this matchup seeing these kind of rotation matchup based situations where we're like, oh, there's this particular thing that one team is doing that's really working or not working, and they have to adjust.
I think the thing that's really weird about the Spurs is close to the beginning of the season, I remember looking into it. The Knicks are priced, I believe, about 2 to 2.5 points better than the Spurs. And, it was accepted. I mean, Spurs only had about a 40.5 or 42.5 win total, I believe, coming into the season. They're expected to probably make the playoffs, but not be in the finals clearly. And this is, you know, the reason they're doing so well is essentially three players. Wemby, Harper, and Castle have all leveled up big time. I mean, Wemby came into the season probably as the fourth or fifth best player, and in my opinion, he's clearly the best player and has been for the last 2 months. And it's like, how much better is Wemby now than the second best is really the question that people have to ask, and that's what makes this team so difficult to gauge. It's like, is Wemby just running hot? Is he actually, maybe a point or two better than Shea or Jokic, or is he actually, closer to them? I don't know, and it's really really hard. It's like, do you want to use a larger sample size, but someone like Wemby, where he's so clearly evolving, you don't want to use a large sample size because you don't think the later data works. But then the more recent games, you don't want to like suffer from a small sample size. So it's very difficult to put a number on really like how good the Spurs team is. I mean, I think something that's very interesting is next season they're pricing the Spurs at OKC as equivalent. They have the same finals odds, which that shows you like how much they really expect, the Spurs team to take another leap, which is pretty crazy.
Do you think that is, um, again, flow-based bias, right? That the Spurs are active, so they're overpriced going into next year's futures markets, and would you buy OKC at the implied fair there, or do you think that's a realistic pricing? There's also,
Uh,
of course, salary and roster and stuff that happens between now and then too.
yeah, I think clearly right now OKC is the play. I mean, it's certainly possible that OKC gets a player like Trey Murphy, or they make a move for Anthony Davis, or I mean, I see this out. I think it's unlikely, but they may move for Giannis or something like that, and then they're clearly ahead. And then another thing that people don't want to admit is Wemby has some real injury risk, and if you guaranteed injury health, it's pretty accurate pricing, and because of that, like, I think this is pretty reasonable overall, and there's also just a realistic chance, in my opinion, that, um, OKC doesn't make a big move this year. Wemby improves even more, looks even better, and they finish as the 1 seed and favorites over OKC in the Western Conference Finals. So if if that's the case, like, this price is too short for them. But factoring in injuries, teams changing, et cetera, I think OKC is clearly a buy here. And the Spurs are getting a little, like as you said, the flow is a little, they're biasing a little bit because of how good the Spurs have been. But I think it's a little shocking that, for the last 2 years, at least in my opinion, betting an OKC was just a plus EV move and you could do it. And they were clearly the best team in the league. So who knows? Maybe you can just, you know, back to Spurs and be good. What did you think, Henry? What do you think about that?
I defer to you completely. I mean, I think sometimes you see this. I know NFL a little bit better, where I do think a lot of times the end of a season can be really overweighted, right? Especially if you have a team that has quarterback injury or something, and they just kind of write off a season and burn it off. Oftentimes they're underpriced, at least versus fair, kind of
Oh,
this far out, right? And
yeah.
there's also you don't bet NFL futures 6 months before game one, so it doesn't really matter often.
That
Um,
reminds me of the Myles Garrett trade. I mean, Myles Garrett gets traded to the Rams, and the next day I checked the odds, and I've seen like plus 500, plus 550 for the Rams. I'm like, do you realize how good the Rams would have to be priced if that's actually close to fair? I mean,
yeah,
the only team that's, I think, gotten equivalent pricing to that, and it's actually made sense, was like prime Brady and the Patriots, where it was like, oh, they might go 16-0, and like Mahomes when they had like,
yeah. Mahomes has definitely done it.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, like that's like reasonable. But it's just, yeah, like exactly. Who's betting Super Bowl 6 months out? It's crazy.
Right. I remember like the season where there was a contract dispute with Lamar Jackson, and it felt like he might get dealt. But I always thought that was BS. Like just the nature of, the way that it even works once you've tagged a player. I thought it was a very low chance he would leave, and I got Ravens 32-1 to win the Super Bowl with peak Lamar Jackson. It just like doesn't make any sense.
Well, that
So
loss, so had to be bad.
no, obviously, yeah, it's never cash, but I mean, I think it was, 12-1 by the start of the
Oh, of
season
course.
without a significantly changed roster. Okay, up next, we are going to put our close friend Will in the OpticOdds hot seat to discuss the FIFA World Cup. Okay, we are now joined by Will, the host of the Yanks Abroad podcast covering the U.S. men's national team and all things soccer here in the OpticOdds hot seat. Will, how are you doing?
I'm excited for World Cup. We're 48 hours away as we record right now. It'll be 24 hours, I guess, when this comes out.
So, Will, Chris and I are not experts on soccer whatsoever. We had to do extensive research to talk about La Liga for even 2 minutes. Uh, we're aware of the group stage, the overall architecture of the World Cup a little bit, but definitely have major gaps. So to start, could you give us a little bit of a walkthrough about the structure of the World Cup, um, particularly in the group stage, and how that plays into the markets that are offered on it?
Yeah. So the group stage, well, first of all, I think it's key to realize that this is the first 48 team World Cup. So the group stage is going to be a totally different beast for everybody because now every third place team is going to find their way into the knockout stages. So the way that these games have used to gone is by the time you get to the third match of the group stage, at least half the matches are completely irrelevant. Like you have either a first place team with 6 points who's already qualified in first against a team with 0 points. They have no chance at this point because they can't get to third. Like third doesn't matter. They can't get to second. Now you're going to have every match mean something. Every goal means something. And the difference between placing third and second will be massive. If you place third, you're going to play a winner of a group. So you can play a Spain, a France, a Germany, versus if you come in second, you're going to have a much easier route. And so, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that affects match to match basis and how these coaches handle their lineups. Because, in the past, again, like you're putting out your strongest lineup the first two matches, even though they're 4 or 5 days apart, and then hopefully resting for the third match. We may not see that in the group stages for this World Cup, which I think, I mean, listen, I'm not the expert here on the gambling side of things. I think will change the way that people bet this World Cup.
Well, I wanna ask about that because as a book, or a market maker really, my instinct is to assume that fading the United States, here in America is just winning every single game because everyone's gonna be biased and wanting to back America. But is there any other, like, fan favorites? Like, my instinct would be, like, fading France is probably good because of Mbappe and he's such a star, but am I like, do you think fading, like, the big overwhelming favorites like Spain too could be good? Like, who do you think the public here in America would back? Other than the obvious one, which is America.
Brazil. Brazil is a big one to me that the average fan, like, here's Brazil, they think home of soccer. Like, that's really the biggest. If there's a country in the world that loves soccer the most, it's Brazil. And their team is far and away the most overrated. They are not deep in any positions. Their attack is, first of all, they're going to put Neymar out there on zero knees. I mean, he's basically playing without an ACL in one knee and a torn MCL in the other. Their midfield is not what it's used to be, and they don't really have a striker they can rely on who's shown up in big tournaments before, but they're being priced as the fifth favorite, I think, to win the World Cup. To me, I think there are eighth, ninth, 10th favorites who are more likely to win this World Cup than Brazil, and I think you're going to see a lot of money on them, and I would expect them to have a disappointing result in at least one of the group stage games. And remember, these are three-way lines as well, so it's like you're going to have all these people who don't bet soccer a lot betting the money line on these teams and not realizing that there is a third option of a draw that's going to screw them. So, like, the people who are betting Brazil, even England. Like, England, yes, they're going to make a run because they're so talented, but they always have a disappointing result at some point. They play a little bit more boring. They're a little less risky. So those two teams to me are the ones that, like, here in America, you're going to see everyone backing outside of the U.S. men's national team, and they'll probably find some disappointment.
You brought up the three-way money line thing, which for novice soccer traders is a trip up for sure, right? Ties are not pushes. I want to ask about some other kind of uh, common snags or complications to soccer, especially in like kind of tournament play. So first of all, um, is margin of victory a major factor at all in the way the World Cup works? And my follow-up question would be, how many games into the group stage do you start to see kind of game theory decisions between teams where it's like, oh, we only need a tie or better. So like even though the game kind of matters, we're not necessarily going to play these guys all these minutes. Yeah, like when does that sort of start to happen where you have to actually pay attention to the meta game of the whole thing rather than just a matchup?
Really, game 3, I mean, maybe in the second game, but truly the third match or the final match of the group stage is when you're gonna see teams know their goal differential matters, so margin of victory will start to come into play, right? Like, a team might know, "Okay, if we draw 0-0, we're through to the knockout stage." And, like, that's not how England's gonna play it, but if Cape Verde is in a situation where they can, in their first World Cup, make it to the knockout stages by getting a 0-0, I mean, they're gonna sit 10 guys behind the ball for 90 minutes, right? So that's a totally different story.
Wait, wouldn't that matter though in game 1 and 2? Because if you win like by 7 in game 1 and 6 by game 2, your margin of victory is so padded. So, or am I mistaken there?
No, no, you're correct, but teams, I mean, the chances of that happen. Well, here's the thing. There are gonna be matches like that because of this 48-team World Cup. There are teams like Cape Verde, not to keep talking about them. You could talk about Haiti, like, who don't make World Cups. They don't.
Shout out Cape Verde, dude. We love Cape Verde. Big Cape Verdean population here in Rhode Island.
So, yeah, like, I think you're gonna see some overwhelmingly insane scores, which will also then, when you come to match day 3, like, a team may, not it'll look like in the table, oh, they've got 6 points and another team's got 3 points in second place. If they get 3 points, they could tie them, but, like, the goal differential will be so extreme already that it may not matter at all. So I think there is going to be a lot when we get to match day 3 for these group stage matches where you need to be looking at what is the goal differential, what is the head-to-head in the group. That is where it's going to start to play into things that are more important than just the result.
So something I want, there's an angle here in typical, sports. So, like baseball is a good example where if you're down like 9-0 in the 8th inning or whatever, you're liable for like for you to bring in like a position pitcher. And then obviously like the live spread and live total is almost always off because it's just like, well, you've got your third baseman pitching, or you've got your outfielder pitching, and he's gonna like his expected run give up is significantly more than even like a bad pitcher. In soccer, there's this, and this does not happen normally because like say a random match that's not World Cup related, not group stage related. If you're up like 3-0 with 75 minutes, to 15 minutes to go, are teams not pulling their starters and like, okay, I don't want to risk injury, or does that not really happen?
Well, you only have 5 subs in a match, so
Oh, right. Okay.
you run out of subs, and also most times, like when a team goes up 3-0, 4-0 with 15 minutes to play, they don't want to expend the energy to go try and score more goals necessarily, right? Like that doesn't mean they won't happen, but it's not like a position player coming in where it's like the run that like they're just gonna, if a 50-mile-an-hour meatball's coming across the plate, you're gonna, hit a home run. It's a little bit different when it comes to soccer in that way. Like usually if a team goes up 3-4-0, it doesn't end up in an 8-9-0 situation, even if it's in the first 20 minutes.
Right. So that's what I'm asking. In this World Cup, could it? Because it's like now, if you're up 4-0, like with 20 minutes to go, 15 minutes to go, adding an extra goal or two could really help you in the group. In the
I
point
mean,
difference.
you might see it happen once, but I don't think that that's going to be something to watch for like on a
Okay,
match to match basis.
fair enough.
Feed me another question. I know so little about the World Cup. I don't know the next thing I should ask.
Well, I guess the next big thing is how is it going to be affected by there's an extra round of knockout matches, right? We used to start in the round of 16. Now we're going to start in the round of 32. Teams have a whole lot further of a way to go. What are the chances of a star picking up an injury? Like I think you will see. I mean, we saw the first African team to make a semifinal in the last World Cup in Morocco. I think we'll see another story like that just because adding another match adds more variables. It adds more chance for injury. It adds more minutes on the legs. It adds more like changes to the starting 11s than we're used to seeing because you're adding another entire match. And I mean, even if you just look at the season for club football, Arsenal, who ended up, winning the Premier League, losing the Champions League final, they played 60 matches this season. They have players who played 5,000 minutes, which means nothing to you too, but that's a lot of minutes. Like they're going to be tired legs out there. Like there are more and more matches every year between World Cups, which means more changes in lineups, which means more, variables of players that we haven't necessarily seen on the big stage. So I would expect to see like, for me, someone like Ecuador, like could make a run that, sounds crazy to a non, you know, fan of the sport. Like you're expecting to see a Spain and Germany, but it wouldn't surprise me where a team like that, who maybe has fewer players who played so much club football this year, but is able to make a run.
This is kind of an active market right now, actually, the furthest advancing African nation. Do you have a lean on any of the African teams that you think could sneak past the into the knockout round or further?
I mean, I haven't looked at what that looks like right now, but I would imagine Morocco's probably a favorite. You probably have Senegal second, and then
That you're 2 for 2. If you nail 3, you got a prize.
you had Egypt third. They think Mo Salah is going to drag Egypt.
Egypt's 4th, Ivory Coast
Yeah,
3rd.
Ivory Coast never does well in big tournaments. I don't mind like the World Cup is made for stories. Like it is. Mo Salah had a bad year at Liverpool. Everyone thinks he's going to leave. This is going to be his last World Cup. Like I don't hate a storyline of Egypt somehow finding the way to be the furthest traveled African team in this tournament. And again, that they could win one knockout game and could be the furthest. You know what I mean? Like those markets are interesting because there could be one African team that makes it out of the group stage. Like that's a possibility, right? And so we're not even talking about accomplishing that much to be the furthest, making African team.
Do you think that any point the USA will be, even in the futures market, will be anywhere close to value? I mean, I'm going to guess that there's no way. Yeah.
Not even on a match-to-match basis, they won't be. I mean, everyone's saying they have I cover this team for the last 3 years leading up to this World Cup. Everyone's saying they have such an easy, group. The team that got qualified the lowest to get into this group was Turkey, who we lost to last summer 2-1. Could have been 5-1. They dominated us. Paraguay, who's given us trouble in major tournaments in the past. And Australia, who I know some Australian fans just from, the world of X and whatnot, who think they have the easy group because they got the U.S. men's national team. Like, it's nothing more American than to believe you have an easy path when you're playing countries that aren't America. And listen, I think we will win the group. That is my honest to God belief. But I don't think it's going to be pretty 3 wins. And I think we're going to be heavy favorites in at least 2 of these matches. So no, I don't think there's going to be value in betting the United States men's national team until if we get to like a quarterfinal and we go up against England. And even then, like, I don't expect the value to be like we should probably be. I mean, I'm not great in the prediction market speak, but let's call it 4.5 to 1 to win in 90 minutes. We'll probably be at like 2.75 to 1. Like, I don't think we'll be ever valued correctly just because the sheer number, especially here in the States, the sheer number of people who are going to the bar at 9 a.m. to drink and bet on the U.S. men's national team will ruin that market for everyone.
Yeah, this reminds me of it was very fun to see the last year. They did the Canada versus America NHL All-Star, or no, not that. They did the hockey like
Yeah, it was like the 4 nations or whatever.
4 nations. Sorry,
Yeah.
4 nations, yeah.
And it was so funny looking at the prediction market, and you just see every single person is backing the USA there. And I hate to say it, but you could just back Canada at like whatever, and just it's good. And it's like, I guess I'm treated for my nation, but I think it's like significant value. It's not, I would be legitimately shocked if we ever don't desperately need the USA to lose every single match. It's gonna be very fun.
Well, I would imagine the prediction market space, like the draw will be a good result for prediction markets as well, because no one bets the draw, and that's going to be what 30% of the results in the group stages. Like that's just going to be free for prediction markets, sportsbooks, whatever you want to call it. Like especially here in the States, I think it's a difference. Like obviously this isn't where you guys play in Europe. Like it's a different story over there. They only bet this sport, so they're betting the draw. They're betting who to have a yellow card and in what time. Like there are people out, but in this country, I think the draw is just going to be a place to eat.
It's funny you mentioned that. Our friend Max, actually, who we had on this pod a couple weeks ago, texted me. He said, "Texted me this 3 years. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm rooting for every World Cup game to end in a draw." And I'm like, I don't have much right now. He's like, I know in 5 days I'm going to have infinite draw on every game. And, that just, it sounds like based on your instinct, and he's a little bit more knowledgeable about this kind of stuff than I am, that yes, no one, the three ways that it trips so many people up, and then you get confused. It's just like, I could, and we already know that we're gonna see like people complain on Twitter, like, I'm getting scammed. I bet USA to win, and they tied, and they won the game, but I lost. I don't know what happened, and it's like, well, they were tied at 90 minutes and they won in overtime or whatever, and it's okay. That's why you
And the
lost.
sportsbooks will run those promotions that are like, bet, $20 on a team, and if it's a draw, you get it back in bonus bets, and then people lose the bonus. Like, that's what they're going to be doing all World Cup.
Winning the stage and advancing are separate things too, right? So a lot of times you might see like, oh, great odds to win the stage. Like, no. That means literally be number one within your group, not
Yeah,
just
so
advance.
there's going to be winning your group. There's going to be to advance out of the group, which again now with third place teams totally changes the way that those markets are, because third place also advances out of the group. So I there's not going to be much value on betting on it, or whatever you want to call it, out of it, advancing out of a group, unless you're taking the team that's like everyone believes has no shot, like a Haiti. But yeah, there's not going to be much odds there. And then the other thing people are going to get tripped up on are when we get to the knockout stages, there are no draws, but you're still betting a money line in 90 minutes unless you are betting to advance. And so many people are going to get tripped up by that. And there's going to be endless, as you said, people being like, oh, well, they won the game in 120 minutes of penalty kicks. Well, they drew 0-0 in the 90 minutes. So you lost that. The odds are completely different, right? Like, for example, just to use the Champions League final, I think Arsenal was like plus 185 or plus 200 to win the match, but they were like plus 115 to win the Champions League. Like, it's a completely different gamble that you're making.
Are you going to be able to get to any of the matches this year, Will?
I'm waiting on a call to make it happen. I think I'm excited to see, like, 1 week in, if it's as horrible as everyone thinks it is. I think what I've been saying to people is the press is so negative about this World Cup that there's no way it could live up to how bad everyone is expecting it to be. So it'll probably end up being better, and it'll be harder to get tickets. But my feeling is when we get to this third round of group stages, there's going to be so many matches that don't end up mattering or are like so lopsided that I'll find my way into a game at MetLife or in Philly, and I'll just wait it out for that.
So I just pulled up on the arena market. It's top goal scorer, and I'm seeing Mbappe 1, Harry Kane 2, Holland 3, and then I'm not even gonna try to Mikel. I'm gonna butcher that name. You probably know well. Zembal.
Oyarzabal is the fourth highest.
Yeah, and then I see Messi and Ronaldo. I'm guessing Messi and Ronaldo are just like nowhere close to the top 10 and getting priced like ridiculous. Or am I mistaken there? Like,
Well, Ronaldo's getting pressure. Ronaldo's not going to be the top goal scorer. He may not even be a starter. So he's not going to be the top goal scorer. Messi, that sounds probably about right. He doesn't really play as far forward. I mean, it's also like penalties completely skew this, which makes it so hard to bet the Golden Boot because, okay, Ronaldo could have a horrible World Cup, but theoretically he's their penalty kick taker. And if they get 4 penalty kicks over 6 games, and he scores 1 other goal, he could end up being, 5 goals. That's usually around a golden. I mean, the Golden Boot would probably be more like 7 goals. Now we have an extra game, but whatever it may be, I think it's so hard to bet. Like, Holland is third, you said, right? Norway has won, one knockout match in 40 years. So unless Holland has an absurd group stage, it's going to be hard for him to win the Golden Boot. But
got
it. He is known for scoring 4 or 5 goals in a match against lower ranked teams. So it's like that. Those markets are really hard to try and get involved in. And I don't think there's a lot of value in them because there's so much unpredictability of, Mbappe scored a hat trick in the final last year. And that's why in 2022 and won the Golden Boot because of that. But he was, 2 goals behind going into the final. So it's hard to make that bet.
Well, you don't really bet soccer, or do you bet?
I mean, I try not to because honestly, the 3-way money line is just you're asking for it. I mean, I'm sure on this World Cup I'll get involved. I'll play some goal scorer bets. Like, you can sometimes, especially a match or 2 in, or if you've watched a team enough, you kind of know where they're weak. One side of the ball, or offset pieces, for example. and can kind of, start to get on like assist makers in the market where, if like a guy is a set piece taker and a certain team is specifically weak against set pieces, there's some value there sometimes because that's not always priced the right way. But I'm not like a huge gambler in the space for sure.
Well, I feel like I have just the slightest grasp on what's going on now, so I appreciate you dragging me through the mud on it.
Not a problem.
Thank you all.
Anytime.
All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. See you next week.